Hi everyone, I'm Dale Smith, aka Journo Dale, and we're here to talk about Canadian politics. It's been a super interesting and crazy week in Canadian politics with the whole COVID-19 pandemic and Parliament being suspended and the market crashing. And I figured I would take a minute and talk a little bit about one of the things we saw on Friday, which was the finance minister, the governor of the Bank of Canada, and the superintendent of financial institutions all showing up at a press conference together to announce some fiscal measures that will hopefully help stabilize the situation with the markets. Why this is particularly unusual is the fact that the three of them tend to keep in very separate spheres because of the notions of institutional independence, particularly the Bank of Canada. And the fact that all three of them were together on the same stage announcing measures is unusual, and it's also possibly reassuring. And that's one of the things that I thought we might delve into a little bit. To a certain extent, part of what they're trying to do is to offer reassurance to the market that yes, they're on top of things and they've got a plan to try and stabilize things. Because part of what's happened with the market is this kind of panic selling over pandemic fears, and complicated in Canada, of course, by the crash in oil prices because Saudi Arabia and Russia are engaged in a price war, which is devastating our oil economy at the same time. So with so much financial chaos going on, the fact that the three major players were all there together and kind of announcing measures that they each could do within their own sphere, I think was partially intended to send a message that we're all kind of on the same page, we're all working together. They're trying to offer that psychological reassurance to the markets that yes, they're on top of it. You don't need to panic, and hopefully Monday they will, the kind of doom spiral might start to correct itself. Possibly, who knows? One of the other things I think is possibly a message in there is the notion that they're trying to ensure that fiscal policy and monetary policy, for example, are on the same page and not at loggerheads. And we did see that happen during the tail end of the last financial crisis, where the Conservative government at the time decided to go for austerity measures because they wanted to achieve a balanced budget before the election, whereas the Bank of Canada was forced to essentially continue monetary stimulus to keep the economy going. When you have contractionary fiscal policy and stimulative monetary policy, they didn't always work together. And I think there is also possibly a message in what happened Friday to kind of reassure people that they are on the same page. So just to kind of put things in context, what Bill Morneau announced on Friday was $10 billion available through programs with BDC and EDC and these kinds of development corporations that ensure that there's going to be loans available for businesses who need them, as well as to reassure people that there is more fiscal stimulus coming next week. They are still putting together packages that are designed to do things like ensure that there are measures for workers who don't get EI if they need to be in quarantine or self-isolation as a result of the COVID-19. And that's all stuff that is still going to be happening next week. And he also needed to send that message that, yes, we are still working on this. It's coming. For Stephen Poloz, it was the emergency rate cut for interest rates. Again, signaling that, yes, they're going to ensure that there's room in monetary policy for stimulus if it's there. This rate cut means that there's not a lot rate left to cut for future measures. So that's also why fiscal stimulus on the government side is necessary. And the third part of this was the Jeremy Rudin, the supervisor of financial institutions, basically lifting some of the liquidity caps in banks so that there is money available in the system if necessary. Again, more I think for psychological reassurance than it is any particular crunch of liquidity in the market currently, but just kind of signaling that yes, this is all on the table, so as to assure the markets that you can stop panicking now. One of the reasons why having them all there was remarkable was, again, this notion of independence. And the central bank in particular is very conscious of being seen to be independent from government. So much so that there have been stories where one of the deputy governors wouldn't show up at an event because it was possible that the prime minister or the finance minister would be at the same event. And they didn't want to necessarily be seen together or to have messages that might have been contradictory to one another. And so that, I think, is another reason why having the three together on the stage was significant. But it could raise questions about just how independent is the central bank if the finance minister calls them up and says, you know, let's work together on something. That, I think, is a question that we should talk about in the future, particularly in the context of a parliamentary committee when Parliament comes back. But in the meantime, they have put this message out there that they want to provide that reassurance to the markets. And so I think that's something we need to keep in mind, and also just something to put a marker down for the future. As for this upcoming week, we'll see what other measures the government has to announce. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion going around between how do we both promote self-isolation and social distancing in the face of a pandemic, at the same time as we need to ensure that the economy doesn't grind to a halt in the meantime. And that could be issues around connectivity, measures that will make it easier for people to work from home, those kinds of things. I'm sure we're going to see possibly a boom in online shopping in the meantime. But I think these are things we're going to have to keep an eye on. And as the situation evolves, you know, kind of go back in a few weeks and look at what's going on and kind of take stock and then ask those questions about institutional independence and so on. So yeah, let's keep an eye on that. And that's everything for this week. Join us again next week for some more Canadian politics. I'm Dale Smith. That's at journo_Dale on Twitter. And don't forget to like the video, share, subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Thanks, everyone.